Hello and welcome to a very special Monterey Car Week preview episode of the Buy, Sell, Hold Spotlight presented by Sports Car Market Magazine. I'm Darin Roberge. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Also, be sure to join in the conversation and share your thoughts by leaving us a comment below. Our guest today is Sports Car Market contributor Daren Kloes. Welcome, Darin.
Thanks, Darin.
So, before we get going here, why don't you introduce yourself and give a little bit of background?
Yeah, you bet. I'm Darin Kloes. I've been with Sports Car Market as an auction analyst since 2015. And a little bit about my background. I started out, I got cars in my blood. From the time I was born, I can't remember anything but having cars in my life. I helped my dad originally when I was about 5 years old. I helped him restore a 1941 Cadillac convertible to Concours level condition. And I think that's where it started. And my mom, tells stories about me, identifying a 1932 Ford as it passed by when I was about 5 years old. So that's where it all began. I started out and I started buying and selling motorcycles. That led to, by the time I was 14, I started flipping cars. First one was a 1964 T-Bird. Did lots of T-Birds and Mustangs through that era, through my high school era. And I ended up funding my college education, buying and selling collector cars. It moved from, Mustangs and muscle cars to eventually Mercedes and Porsches and a little bit of British sports cars thrown in between. I have a very broad spectrum of cars that I've dealt with.
Well, there's certainly a broad spectrum of cars to behold in Monterey 2023 this year, so let's get right to it. Going into August, what do you feel like the health of the marketplace is, and what questions or concerns will maybe need to be answered in Monterey Car Week this year?
Well, I got to tell you, I'm more excited this year about the Monterey Car auctions with the offerings that are being put up. It's amazing. It's better than when Starbucks brings back pumpkin spice lattes, I'll tell you. And you got your cars, your headliner cars like the 412P at Bonhams and the 250 GT at Gooding. Or how about a C-Type, a D-Type, and an XKSS at RM? Crazy. But this year it even goes deeper, and there's the cream of the crop of every category, whether it's brass era, 50s convertibles, muscle cars, or even JDM and the 80s group beep rally cars. Just an incredible offering across the board this year. I think there is going to be some challenges, in pursuing the catalogs of the top auctions. I'm seeing some estimates that look like they're a little on the optimistic side. In judging the health of the market overall, I'm going to be looking at sell-through rates and the number of cars that meet at least their low estimate. Last couple of years, the cumulative sell-through rate was around 80%. If we're going to even be close to that number and the cars are meeting their estimates, then I think we can all breathe a sigh of relief.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of big cars there, and there's definitely a clear sort of like catalog arms race going on between the auction companies, it seems. It seems like as soon as one drops something big, somebody else drops something big, and that they're definitely pushing the envelope maybe a little harder than they normally do. What do you think the culprit of that is?
Well, these auction companies are highly competitive. They're always trying to outdo each other, and for good reason. I mean, say each auction provides a comparable Mercedes Gullwing, and one sells for a clear maybe $200,000-$300,000 premium. Then me, as the owner of a 300 SL, which auction company am I more likely to sign with next year? So, competition, and I think in this case, competition just breeds everybody's excellence.
Yeah, and I think Monterey definitely sort of sets the standard for what happens over the next 12 months in this particular segment, for sure. So let's talk the financial climate right now. Interest rates are in the news a lot. The strength of the dollar, other investment outlets. I think recession fears are slightly less than they maybe have been, especially for this sort of segment. What do you think that's going to have any effect on what happens in Monterey?
Well, my day job is a commercial banker, so that doesn't make me any more knowledgeable, I guess, on what's going to happen in Monterey this year, unfortunately. But, the dollar is showing some weakness as of late, but, not alarmingly so. Real interest rates are climbing for cash investments. So there are alternatives that are offsetting the dollar. But for most of us, collector cars are not seen purely as an investment vehicle, pardon the pun. So this market is less affected, not immune by any stretch to the other investments that are out there, but less so.
Last year, we saw a lot of supercars trade hands, low mileage, like 90s Porsches. So entry-level newer buyers in this particular segment, what do you think they're going to buy this year, and are they going to buy this year?
Well, newer buyers, I assume you mean Gen X, Gen Y buyers, because any new buyers in older segments are being, they're just basically replacements through attrition. But those with, newly acquired wealth, or at least those with disposable income, are buying cars of their youth, not indifferent from other generations. Group B rally cars, Japanese and JDM models, BMW M3s, or even sedans, which have never been appealing as collector cars to anybody over 50.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff out there, and it seems like the auction companies are aware of that and are catering to that. We'll kind of get to that, some of those options here a little bit down the line. As far as dealers go, where do they fit into the equation, and what do you think they're going to do this year?
Well, there's always going to be a place for competent and trustworthy dealers. Even on Bring a Trailer, you're seeing new dealers establish themselves, just by name, and they can command a 10 to 20% premium just because of their, well-known, professional, and thorough presentations. 911R is one that comes to mind. When I see him come up, I already know that car's going to go more than it's worth. You have established dealers like Symbolic that has learned to adapt with amazing success.
It's an interesting environment for everybody right now, but it seems like everybody's certainly got a piece of the pie and is ready to make it work. So the list of collections in Monterey Car Week is significant this year. So let's go ahead and do a quick rundown, and we'll kind of walk through a couple of these. Armed Sotheby's featuring the Lost and Found collection. This is 20 barn find Ferraris in project condition. Full half century worth of collecting here, all different kinds of projects, rare vehicles, etc. This is probably the collection that has the world the most excited in Monterey. RM also has the Terrence Adderley collection. This is continued over from Monterey 22 and Amelia Island 23, but rather than mid-century sports cars, this one is mostly going to be pre-war classics. Another collection that is carried over at RM is the Ionelli family collection. They also offered cars in Monterey of 22. This one is a lot of mid-century and retro sports cars. There's many no reserve examples here. RM also has the Todd Blue collection. It is for Porsches, and guess what? They're all blue. They also have a private collection, mostly mid-century European sports cars, and it's a lot of rare stuff from BMW, Fiat, Ferrari, Seata, BMW, etc. Really nice stuff. Moving over to Gooding & Company, their lead collection there is the Stanley Gold Porsche collection. Several decades of collecting represented in that one, including their feature vehicle, or one of their featured vehicles, which is a 1960 Porsche RS60 with a lot of original stuff going on. We'll talk about that a little bit later. They've also got an Italian sports car collection, which includes the first 308 GT4 Dino ever produced. The estimate on that is incredible, and I think it'll probably get there. $500,000 for a 308 GT4, pretty amazing. Also included in that collection is a 512 TR, a Dino, and several premium Alphas. They've also got a prominent Southern California collection, several retro and late model examples there, including the wonderful Hera X330 GTS. Then they've got two brass era collections, the Jerry S. Foley collection, the John O. Boehmer collection. Moving on to Broad Arrow Group, we've got the Academy of Art University automobile collection. That one is a little bit of everything. A lot of high-end pre-war cars are featured there. Broad Arrow also has the Gateway Auto Museum collection, which is U.S. pre-war and 1950s classics and prototypes. A lot of Hendrick collection stuff there. Over at Mecum, they have the Veloci Schnell Fast collection, which is a lot of wonderful mid-century European sports cars, including several Ferraris, like the Pirelli Tire 275 GTB-C, and a Super America and a Super Fast Ferrari. They've also got the Reggie Jackson collection, which is selections of different muscle cars from the 1960s and 70s. At Mecum, they've also got the Mike and Debbie Rogers Datsun collection, which is which is collectible Z cars from every era. They've also got the Santa Cruz motorcycle collection, which features a 1915 Indian 8-valve board track racer, one of 4, owned by a legendary Dewey Sims for 36 years. We'll talk about that a little more in detail at the end of the show. Quite an incredible bike there. Anyway, moving on to individual market segments and individual lots. Darin, what do you think will be the hot segment this year?
Well, I mean, I guess the easy answer is probably, Japanese cars, European cars that dominated the performance landscape of the 80s and 90s when U.S. manufacturers were just producing Malays, essentially. You mentioned the car collections. One of the ones I'm really going to be interested in watching is maybe not the sexiest, but it's the brass era collections that Gooding are offering. I covered the Bonhams auction in January and at Scottsdale, and there was a simplex there that I think surprised everybody with the amount of dollars they brought. There's a simplex offered at Gooding, so it's going to be interesting to see how that compares.
Yeah, indeed. That segment does seem to be hot. There's a lot of special stuff going on with that simplex at Gooding too, so it should add to the premium there. I expect that one to do quite well, probably beat the estimate. But the belle of the ball this year, once again in Monterey, is Ferrari. So let's talk some Ferraris. Obviously, the car that sort of set the world on fire is at Bonhams. That appeared a couple of weeks ago. Why don't you tell us what that is and let's discuss?
Well, you must be talking about the 67 Ferrari 412P Berlinetta. This is, you cannot talk about Monterey in 2023 without talking about this car. There's not an official estimate. If you believe the media, you'll see most estimates are settling at around 40 million. It's a big money car. It's an interesting car because it's got a fantastic race history. In 1970 or 67, it was got third place at Spa. It raced at Le Mans. It was a 7th place at Brands Hatch. Amazing long history of wins. It's interesting because when Jackie Stewart was asked about it, he said this was from the era when sex was safe and racing was dangerous, which I loved that. That's from Bonham's own catalog, but I had to say it. It's believed it's still owned by James Glickenhaus, who also owns the supercar company SCG. It's not mentioned in the catalog either, but there's no history of him selling it. He tells the story about one of the key factors of this car that makes it interesting and valuable is that it still has the matching numbers, chassis, engine, gearbox, and the original bodywork. For a race car of that era to have all of those items is amazing. Glickenhaus tells the story that under David Piper's ownership that he had stripped off the original uncrashed body, put it in his garden, and built the fiberglass body that he raced in. And then later, he had a crash that, guess what? Burned to the body. But the remaining components were still intact. And then the original body was still fine, and at a point later was reunited with the chassis. So he's able to still say that car has the original body for the chassis.
Yeah, it's a pretty astonishing car for sure, and it should be interesting to see what it brings. I don't know if it quite hits 40 million. I suspect somewhere between probably, 25 and 30 million, somewhere in that area, maybe a little bit more. But it's certainly a car that is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for somebody. Another car that's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I'll tell you, I love this car so much. 1962 Ferrari 250 GT short wheelbase Berlinetta. Gooding estimate on that is 9 to 11 million. It is a wonderfully patinaed, unrestored example of this obviously iconic Ferrari, considered by many to be one of the greatest driver's cars of all time. Sold originally in Italy. Been through quite a few impressive collections, including Giano Daubini from 1967 to 1985. I've said it on this show a million times. I'm going to keep saying it. Italian cars in any iteration of Grigio are fabulous, and they are the best versions of those cars. It's got beige leather in it also. One of 4 owners from new. and it's never been offered before for public sale. It's obviously documented to the walls by all the people that you want to see documenting these particular vehicles. The originality component, do you think that helps this car or hurts this car? Obviously, there's different buyers, I think, probably for each of these. I think it helps this car a little bit. I'm not sure it hits the high estimate. I think it sticks more around the low estimate area, but I do think that this level of originality will be of value to somebody. What are your thoughts here?
Absolutely. Originality trumps restoration when it can be presented in this manner with, patinated leather and, worn carpets. It has all of the scars and wounds that it has received over the years, but they're few and far between anyway. It still presents really beautifully.
It's a fabulous car for sure. And back on the race side over at RM Sotheby's, there's another pretty fabulous car that they have on offer there. That's another kind of once in a lifetime opportunity. Why don't we talk about the Ferrari 250 LM?
Yeah, the 22nd of only 32 ever built. Raced at the 1968 24-hour Le Mans. Ferrari, introduced the 250 LM in late 63. So why are you talking about 1968 24 hours? Well, it was supposed to replace the 250 GTO, but they couldn't meet the homologation requirements. They needed to build 100. Only 32 were built. Thus, this 250 LM had to race in the prototype classes. Still did very, very well, even when it hit Le Mans. It was fabulous. It had 4 overall victories and 1 additional class win at the 1965 BRSCC season. It was piloted in period by notable racers, including Halewood, Enos Ireland, Michael Parks. Still retains, just like the last Ferrari, but it still retains its original engine and transaxle, utilized in 1968. So, this is a tough one. The estimate is 18 to 20 million. That is a premium over any others that I am aware of. So, I'm thinking it's probably going to be more in the 15 to 16 million dollar range. I think one of the things, Darin, that we have to think about is there are some world-class Ferraris here. Question is, how big is the market? If there were only 3 offered, then, there may be enough to go around. But now we've got maybe possibly too many to go around.
Yeah, there's a lot of these. And there was a recent sale of these 2 over in France. And I'm not necessarily sure that sale was handled completely correctly I'm not blaming the auction house in particular for that. There were parties there that I think maybe did some things that they shouldn't have on that. But that car, I think, hit 17 million. So this car seems to me to be a better car, and it's being presented better. So I think it certainly could get there, but you make an incredibly valid point. There's a lot of really, really special Ferraris on the peninsula this year. And another one is over at Bonhams, this 1951 Ferrari 212 Export Barchetta. That one's got an estimate of 4 million to 4 million 7. And this is the 2300 to 40 cc single overhead cam, a V12 engine, the 195S unit. 3 Weber carburetors on this one, 170 horsepower, 5-speed manual gearbox, 4-wheel drum brakes. And it's got a detailed competition history of being campaigned by Ferrari, including Le Mans, Watkins Glen, et cetera, et cetera. These cars are exquisitely beautiful and timeless. And I really think that on top of the prestige of the race history that this vehicle has, that's really its main appeal on this. Because, you can use these for all kinds of stuff, but they're a little smaller, a little more difficult to sort of deal with on a basis like that. So the question here is this another car, and there's more Ferraris still, that maybe gets kind of lost in the mix because of the degree of huge race cars from Ferrari that are across the peninsula. And yet another one of these cars that is loaded with, very low production or one-off things like this car. There's another one at RM Sotheby's, which is their incredibly exotic and rare competition 250 California Spider. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, the 250 GT short wheelbase California Spider, 9.5 to 11.5 million is the estimate. These are such pretty cars, Darin, that they can be comfortably driven on regular roads and really are grand touring cars is the way I usually think of them. And so much so that sometimes we forget that these are capable race cars as well. And we're in fact race. This is one of them. Achieved third in class and 19th overall at the 62 Targa Florio. It's the second of 56 short wheelbase examples built, and one of just 18 with the uncovered headlamps. This car has a lot of history and a lot of wins behind it. It's one of my favorite things about it is that it was fairly recently restored, and it was restored in the 1962 Targa Florio livery. So it gives it a little bit of a race car look, even with its pretty lines.
Yeah, it's an interesting car for sure. I mean, with the race components on it, as well as it being a low production open headlight car, as well as the fact that it has no vents on it, which is, like I said, it took me a little while to kind of put my finger on what was different about that car, and that was it. I think that car probably hits where it needs to hit. It's such a once in a lifetime opportunity for that one. I mean, you're never going to see another one of those probably like that again. So somebody's probably going to step up to the plate and take advantage of that offering.
Yeah, at Gooding in Amelia Island in earlier this year, there was one that sold for 18 million. So this is a long ways from that. I'm going to be interested to see if we maybe beat this estimate.
Yeah, I mean, it's always an event when a California comes to market, and that should be no exception there. Another car that is definitely sort of an event unto itself, 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB4. This is the Steve McQueen car. It is restored to McQueen specifications, numbers matching engine and gearbox, documented with everything. It's got the period correspondence from Steve McQueen. Estimate is high for a 275 on this, admittedly, 5 million to 7 million, but this is probably the most famous 275 in the world. And the King of Cool has a premium. The question is a $5 to $7 million price tag the premium that McQueen is currently going to draw?
Yeah, I think so. McQueen is magic when it comes to valuation, whether it's sunglasses or cars. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it hits that number.
Not just Ferrari on the peninsula this year. There's plenty of other awesome Italians on offer. Couple really, really good ones to stand out. There's a fabulous Maserati for sale at Broad Arrow Group. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, you bet. That's the 1956 A6G Zagato Berlinetta. And, most of the A6Gs had custom body work. And this is one that is particularly well executed, I believe. It's got, aggressive lines, and it's fast. Just by looking at it, it's fast. It was one of 20 Zagato-bodied Berlinettas, and likely the only one with a double bubble Zagato roof. It raced in the 56 Mille, restored in Italy, and then cosmetically restored again by Paul Russell. It is a fantastic car.
Yeah, beautiful car. What's the estimate on that one?
And that one's at 3.250 or to 3,750.
I'd be pretty surprised if that one doesn't make it. What do you think?
I think it will. I think you'll be probably closer to the lower side of that estimate, but I think it'll make it.
Yeah, Broad Arrow's doing the work on that too. That is the cover car on their 2023 Monterey catalog. Another pretty interesting car that they have over there, 1982 Lancia Rally 37 Stradale. Estimate on this is $500,000 to $600,000. One of 207 homologation Lancia 37 Stradales produced, and it's been expertly restored in 2017. These don't come to sale very much, especially not in the United States. I think this one's probably a home run. I mean, this appeals to a lot of different people, and I expect this one to probably beat the estimate. What do you think?
I think it's got a good chance of beating the estimate. That's a fantastic car.
Now on to British cars. This year in particular has got, I think, probably the best group of British cars in Monterey that I can remember recently anyway, and that's largely courtesy of RM Sotheby's. Let's start right at the top. Jaguar XKSS, always an event to see one of those. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, RM has really nailed it this year, especially with Jaguar. They've got the C-Type, the D-Type, and the XKSS. So all three of the very best models ever offered by Jaguar. the XKS in particular is probably the cream of that crop. And it is the most original and well-preserved of examples that are remaining. Sold new in California and has raced up and down the west side for, at least in period. Has fantastic ownership, still has the numbers and matching engine block and head. It is even proven recently where it ran on the Colorado Grand. This is the most sought after one, and it's got an estimated 12 to 14 million. I don't think it's going to have a problem meeting that low estimate.
Yeah, I think it gets there too. RM kicked out a video this morning on their social media of that car, and the patina on this thing is intoxicating. It is fabulous from every single angle. As mentioned, they've got another pretty fabulous car over there, 1952 Jaguar C-Type, estimate on that 3.5 to 4.2. One of 53 genuine C-Types produced. This one was raced by Phil Hill, so it's got pedigree there. Placed first in the 6-hour Torrey Pines endurance race in 1955, and it's a well-known car in the C-Type community with documentation and ownership from new. Restored in the 1980s, so a little bit older restoration, but it was done by the right people, and of course, it's the wonderful factory-correct color of British Racing Green. This is another car like that Lancia. I don't remember one of these coming up for sale in the last 5 years, at least in the United States. So I think this is one of those situations. If somebody wants and has to have a C-Type, now's the time, and I think they'll probably pay for it. What do you think?
Yeah, it's rare to find a C-Type come up for sale as well as the XKSS. I think the Phil Hill connection there is probably going to be what takes it over the top.
Of course, there is wonderful British pre-war all over the peninsula as well. RM's probably got the best one of these. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, there's a couple of really nice Bentleys. This one at RM is the 1929 4.5 liter short chassis sports tourer, and RM gives it an estimate of 1.8 to 2.4. Now, this one is one of the most original surviving of the 10 short chassis models constructed. It still has its numbers matching body, chassis, engine, the whole bit. It's got a fantastic restoration, and it's very well documented. In the Bentley world, they use their cars. These guys, the owners of these cars are different than the owners of, say, a Ferrari. And you'll find them out on the track with them, busting through the gears. This one is the cream of the crop as far as, it's the 4.5 liter short chassis. You're just not going to find another one anytime soon. 1.4, I think is it might be a little bit on the optimistic side. I think that the market is thinner for the vintage Bentleys.
I mean, I think I agree. There are other Bentleys that are for sale that are on the peninsula, including there's a blower Bentley over at Bonhams that looks pretty good too. But this one is such an interesting car for a number of reasons, and it's kind of why I like this one the best. But I agree. I think the estimate's a little bit on the optimistic side, but I do bet that this car will sell. Another car that I think probably will sell is a 1956 Aston Martin DB3 Special. The estimate on this is 1.7 to 2.2. And this is an original factory development racing project from Aston Martin, and it was campaigned by Works drivers during the time that it was active. And it's beautiful. It has wonderful, wonderful bodywork, great restoration. Believe it or not, it took 9 years to restore this car. 1997 to 2006 was the restoration. And then it was owned under the same ownership for 26 years. It's done Monterey Historics. It's done Colorado Grand. It's documented with everything you want to see, all the AMOC registration entries, et cetera, et cetera. This, I wonder about slightly. I do think this car sells. I do think this car's fabulous, but I wonder if it gets sort of lost in the mix with the Jaguars that are really kind of stealing the show here. I think somebody could get a deal on this car. What do you think?
I think it might be the year to get a deal on it. The Jaguars are going to steal the show.
Of course, there's wonderful German offerings all over the peninsula too. Let's not forget those. And let's start at the top. The RS60 that Gooding & Company has is astonishing. Talk about that.
It is astonishing. And, Darin, when you think of sexy cars from 50s and 60s, you think of Jaguars. You don't think of Porsches as being super sexy. This one to me is super, super sexy. It is among the finest, most original Porsche Spyders that there are out there. The RS60 model, they only made 17 of them. It's got a great racing history, 12 class wins between 60 and 63. You don't beat the provenance and the condition of this car. It is a top Porsche model.
I'll tell you the things that blew me away on this car is these motors got blown to smithereens during campaign stuff. This has got the original motor, and even more so, it's got the original body on it, which, I mean, think about all of the racing this thing did, what it went through, and to survive with what it has right now is certainly impressive. So what's the estimate on this one?
It is 5.5 to 6.5 at Gooding.
Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer on this. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own a car like this, and I think somebody's going to definitely take it home.
You bet. That's that's probably going to go right in the middle of that estimate, is my guess.
Yeah, another really, really impressive race car, another probably once-in-a-lifetime opportunity over at RM Sotheby's, 1956 Porsche 558 prototype. This is a Le Mans works car. Estimate on this is 5.5 to 7.5. I mean, this is it right here. This is the Le Mans car with, that had driver prominence, including guys like Ken Miles and Jack McAfee. And it's been raced everywhere. It's been shown everywhere. It's the real deal, original, to the point of insanity on this thing too. This is another one I think has no trouble hitting its estimate. But I do wonder if there's room for two of these cars. I do think that there is, but then they're different enough. But I mean, that still hangs out there. What do you think on this one?
Yeah, I think that the estimate is a little bit on the high side, but I think we're gonna see it sell.
Another really fascinating car that from Germany is over at Broad Arrow Group. A little different from the race cars that we were talking about here. What you got?
Oh, it's a 66 Mercedes-Benz 600 Pullman Landaulet. And, the Mercedes 600s were amazing. They actually built these things from 63 to 81. They didn't change the looks of them at all. It's amazing to me to think that an 81 still looks like a 1963, but they did. This particular model, though, is a little different from what we usually see with the 600. So the 600, if you remember, was what the bad guys drove in the 007 movies, and are amazingly well known for how well they handle for such a big sedan. They have air suspension, very technical, very expensive to restore. This one, though, is a 600 Pullman Landaulet, which means it is the stretched model. It has nothing but Majesty written all over it. And in fact, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II rode in this car, as well as His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh. Even the Apollo 11 astronauts rode in the car. And the reason was because it was retained by Daimler-Benz after they had built it. And they essentially loaned it out for government use. So it is an amazing car. You will not find these offered very often. And this one is the cream of the crop.
And what's the estimate on this one?
It is $2,250,000 to $2,650,000.
To me, that seems aggressive, but at the same point in time, I know of one of these that sold privately not too long ago, and it was in much worse condition with much less prominence than this car, and it went for way more money than I ever would have expected. So, I mean, do you think this one has a chance?
Yeah, I think it's the provenance that takes it over the top. Being retained by Daimler-Benz and then, lending it out to the Queen herself. I think that's going to put it over the top. I think we're probably looking near the lower side of the estimate.
Yeah, I think it sells for sure. Incredibly cool car. Another couple of incredibly cool cars. I'm going to kind of cheat here and group a couple of these together because out there somewhere, I'm sincerely hoping that somebody buys both of these cars and keeps them together. 1986 BMW Alpina B6 2.7. Estimate on this one is 90 to 110. This is car 40 of 67 examples produced. It's a Japanese market car. They've also got a 1984 Alpina C1 2.3. Estimate on this is 80 to 100. One of 35 C1 2.3s produced between 84 and 86 on this. We've seen M3s kind of go crazy over the last couple of years. I think both of these sell no problem, and I'm really hoping again that they go to the same buyer. What do you think happens here?
Yeah, I think they will sell. They are rare breed, and they're fantastic cars. It's interesting if you look at some of the previous auctions, you'll see that the Alpina designation only helps in a small amount. So we'll see if it takes it over the top this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're reasonably priced for what they are, and I love the story behind them, and I like the fact that there's two. So let's hope for the best on that one. And last but not least, there's always a couple of random oddities in any car week, and that's kind of what makes car week special. What's your pick this time?
Well, it's a 93 Vector Avtech WX3 prototype, and it's over at Broad Arrow, and they've got an estimate of 1.5 to 2 million on it. Now, this is an unusual car, and maybe not executed to the extent that say a Lamborghini Miura or something like that is. It looks a little flat if you look at the lines of it. You don't see these you probably have never seen one of these. It is that unusual, and it has had recent restoration work. I think that the estimate is a little strong. I don't think we'll hit the estimate on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll get close on it, and the recent passing of Jerry Weigert may have some contributing factors to whether or not this does well too. And obviously, he was an interesting guy that was very visible and had a lot of impact. I had about a 4-hour conversation with him one time where I think I said one sentence. Very interesting man, very interesting company, and I mean, I guess if you kind of think about it, it's really sort of America's first supercar.
Yeah, that's the way the auction company essentially bills it too. I think that could be debated, but it is definitely an unusual model.
And now for probably my favorite car in any catalog that anybody's got all the way through Monterey Car Week. Here we go. 1973 Alfa Romeo F12 van. Yes, F12 van. Gooding estimate on this is 100 to 130,000. No reserve on this. Fascinating, rarely seen Alfa Romeo restored to concours standards. It's presented in Auto Delta Racing livery, which is great. Complete with display Alfa Romeo engine and gearbox in the back of this thing, which is fabulous. Front wheel drive configuration. This, if you're an Alfa person, like, you got to have this. And honestly, I think this nukes its estimate. I think once it crossed the block, there is going to be multiple people in that room that absolutely have to have this thing. And I think this thing easily gets to where it needs to get. What do you think?
I think every auction has its unusual cars that are built for a gimmick, and this is almost one of them. But they always do really well, and so this one will exceed its estimate.
Well, and Gooding and Company really likes to do this sort of Mr. Irrelevant thing with their catalog, where they have something really super weird as the last lot every year, and I think that's one of those things that people get excited about and anticipate and stick around to see. And I think maybe the best one they've ever had.
Yeah, it's definitely a marketing ploy. They're trying to make you stick around and see what it goes for. And you're rarely disappointed.
One more lot that I think is worth noting over at Mecum, 1915 Indian 8-valve board track racer. This bike has an estimate of $400,000 to $500,000 on it. It's one of reportedly 4 8-valve racers thought to still be in existence. It's got a prototype Keystone Marion racing frame with factory casings, racing forks, and carburetor. Showed and awarded absolutely everywhere. It was in the Guggenheim Museum Art of the Motorcycle exhibit in the late 90s. And probably most importantly, it was owned and raced by board track racing legend Dewey Sims from 1930 until 1966, with all the documentation included there. This is a pretty incredible motorcycle. Candidly, as far as board trackers or pre-World War I bikes go, this may be the best of the best. This said, $400,000 to $500,000 estimate on this thing seems a little bit ambitious when most of these bikes sell for considerably less than that. We'll see if the Dewey Sims name carries over. We'll see if all the prominence and everything else involved with this bike carries over. But in my opinion, this is quite likely the best board track racer or pre-war American motorcycle to come to market, probably in recent memory. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens here.
Yeah, motorcycles are coming into their own. So this may be the year. We'll see. I know that I believe it's Gooding that has a NV Agusta that is also an amazing bike. I think its estimate is $250,000 for a 750S, and it is also a fantastic motorcycle. There's not a ton of motorcycles in Monterey this year. It's not like the motorcycle auction that we've seen before, and so there may be they may be limited enough that supply and demand forces the hand.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Another bike that they have that over at Gooding that's worth noting is the 250 Pirello racing bike that they have over there. No reserve on that. So if you're into mid-century Italian bikes, that would be a good one to try and be in the room for. Okay, Darin, you've been in and around this a long time. You're an excellent contributor for Sports Car Market Magazine. Very knowledgeable perspective indeed. So let's make some Monterey Car Week predictions and do buy, sell, hold. So what do you think overall is going to happen in Monterey this year?
Boy, that's a loaded question. I think that, again, going back and looking at sort of the economy and the stage that's being set, we need to look at Amelia Island. We need to look at Scottsdale, both still strong in light of an economy that was a little suspect. And if we can carry that strength through to Monterey, and I believe that we will, then I think that we're going to sort of, just like the economy, we're going to hit a soft landing. And I think that's not a bad place to be. It's not a bad time to buy a car if that's the case, because it's typical that after sort of even market, it's going to be followed with an increasing market. So I like the chances of buying at this auction.
Yeah, I think that this is one of these situations where everybody's happy. I mean, the fact that matters is that these auction principals all know what they're doing here, and they examine, different variables from different parts of the economy in order to kind of build their catalogs. And it seems to me there's a lot riding on Monterey this year. There's a lot of people that are anxious to get out there and do things. So I suspect that a lot of work's going to get done. A lot of deals are going to get made, and a lot of people are going to probably walk away happy. So give me one category to buy, one category to sell, and one category to hold during Monterey Car Week 2023.
Well, I tried to keep it with sort of attainable cars. If you figure, a couple $100,000 is attainable. But my buy choice is 1972 Alfa Romeo Montreal over at Gooding. It's got coachwork by Bertone. It's $140,000 to $180,000 estimate, and there's no reserve. There's usually a Montreal at every auction. This one is a little different. It's maybe one of the better ones extant. It does have a couple of strange, kind of tasteful upgrades. One is that they painted the rocker panels and they changed the wheels out. Those are both easy to change back. The quality of the rest of the work is over the top. This is a fantastic car. It's got nowhere to go, but if we can somehow achieve that low estimate of $140,000, I think that you've got a car that's going to be worth a bit more in the next 5 years.
What are we selling?
Well, I picked a 1958 Buick Limited convertible. These are awesome cars. I love them. But then the fact of the matter is, they just aren't holding their values like other cars in the market. Those car people are interested in 1950s convertibles are starting to dwindle. Everyone still enjoys them and likes them, but the premium that they used to get is now sort of settling down and making an even return.
So what are we going to hold?
Well, I chose a 2000 BMW Z8. These have amazing underpinnings. They're built from the ground up to be performers. They have the 507 from the 50s that was their inspiration. They're beautiful cars, beautiful lines. And the 2000s, in the early 2000s, I can't think of a prettier car. And it's got engineering and mechanicals to back it up. Its estimate was 200 to 250, and it's being sold without reserve. That's a typical price for those today, around 200,000. This one's got 6,200 miles, so it's probably going to achieve a little bit of a premium over that. I'm guessing mid-estimate, but these are cars that are only going to go up in value over time.
Yeah, beautiful, iconic lines, certainly. And I think those stick around. I also agree with you on the 50 stuff. I think if you've got one and you're not absolutely in love with it, then it's probably time to move that vehicle on as well. So, post Monterey 2023, where do you think this leaves the market and what do you think happens next?
Well, my guess is that we have a strong auction. I'm hoping for an 80% sell-through rate. That's what we've got in the last couple of years, which is an amazing rate. I'm expecting it to happen because there's fewer cars with reserves. There's more realistic buyers, I think, or sellers in the market. I mean, so I'm thinking that we're going to continue on. I think it'll be an even market for commodity types of cars, and then coming out of it in the next year or two as the economy improves, I think that we might see a little of an update.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of concern about where the marketplace was, but I think things are pretty stable looking, at least right now, but we'll know more certainly once Monterey wraps up. Any final thoughts?
I just can't wait. There's so many activities during this Monterey week. There's the auctions, but then there's the Concours d'Elegance, and all the rallies and racing to go along with it. It's going to be a fantastic week.
Yeah, fantastic indeed. And of course, any follow-up coverage, pick up the latest issues of Sports Car Market Magazine or subscribe to the link in the video description down below. We'll have full coverage of everything Monterey, all the auctions, et cetera, and it should be a great week for sure. I would like to thank my guest, Daren Kloes, for joining us today. To learn more about anything that we discussed here, be sure to pick up the latest issue of Sports Car Market Magazine by visiting the link in the video description down below. As a reminder, if you enjoyed this content, please take a moment to like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay on top of future episodes. I'm Darin Roberge, and thank you for joining us on the Buy, Sell, Hold Spotlight.